I did also want to say, because I want to make sure we talk about this scene, because I did write the Sister Melanie scene, and we I had written it to be shot, like that we were going to go to France and we were going to see this nun face off with these Nazis, and it was going to be this huge action sequence, and we couldn't afford it. And so Simon asked me to write it out as just Beatrice reading it to Ava. And of course, it worked out. It was so beautiful and it's so intimate. But, somebody, I think it was Desiree, or somebody said, that's her coming out scene. It's not her coming out scene. She's not talking, deliberately about herself. She's talking reluctantly about herself. And Ava
Right.
picks up on that. Um, And I just want to say that we never planned on Avatrice, but it was that scene. What we did want was, what I really wanted out of it was that Beatrice gets into this story and then realizes what she's reading about and kind of panics a little bit because it's so close to home. And we felt like this was the first time that Beatrice is really coming anywhere close to talking about this issue of sexuality in front of other nuns, or at least Ava. And what she gets back is just pure support and love. And Ava kind of gets it you know, because she's just a creature of pure sunshine, as Alba is as well. And the chemistry between the two of them, the way they played it, the way Christina and Alba played it, sort of, we were like, oh, okay, well, maybe this is the way it needs to go. And then it was all of you who made it happen. When we realized that the fans overwhelmingly wanted to see that relationship, we knew what we had to do. Um, so it was really a group effort between all of us.
For that scene, how many takes did it take them to get that?
I don't know. I was only on set for season two, so I was in LA when they shot
Okay.
season one in Malaga. But it's TV. You don't get many takes. I mean, maybe two or
Right.
three,
Wow.
unless things are going terribly wrong. But Christina and Alba are so good that I mean, you rarely had to do more than two or three takes. I mean, if ever.
Right. Thank
Yeah, how
you.
how much of their input went into that scene? Like I feel like I remember hearing from someone else that Christina in particular had a lot of um ideas for that and had some thoughts on how it should go.
Well, again, I'm sorry, it's a little unsatisfying. I wasn't there, so
That's all right.
um, I didn't meet the cast until season two. Uh, the scene's read as written, but what Christina's doing with it and what Alba's doing with it, but particularly Christina's, it's so subtle and so beautiful. I just rewatched it last night, and you can see it coming over her face, like what she's talking about and how it impacts her personally. And then when Ava, misinterpret, well, it doesn't really misinterpret the point of the story. She kind of interprets it perfectly. And Beatrice is like, that's not what this is about. This is about you finding your power, and her defensiveness, her fear, her relief at Ava's acceptance is so palpable and so beautifully executed. I'm just stunned by her performance. But again, I wasn't there, so I don't know what she had to say.
Yeah. I mean that line I think struck the biggest chord with this fandom. I have seen tattoos, I have read it written in so many forms. It really had a big impact.
What you are is beautiful.
Yes, What You Are is Beautiful.
Yeah, I actually think that line came from The Room, or possibly Matt Bosak, but that was that was a key line that we wanted in the scene. So I don't want to take credit for that one in particular. I mean, I love it, and as soon as it came out, I was like, oh yeah, that's what it has to be. But that was really, the effort of the group.
I think what's great about that line too is obviously it meant so much to the LGBTQ community. But even if you're not a part of that community, like I'm not, I'm an ally, and I've enjoyed being a part of these spaces with people from all over the world. But even if you're not a part of that community, it still speaks to, the human condition. It still
Exactly,
is
yeah.
like a very universal theme for a lot of people who struggle with anything that's difficult about their identity, in particular. And that was beautiful to see reflected in that scene as well. That it has many interpretations, but that main interpretation was wonderful.
Uh, we're so grateful that this was inspirational for the LGBTQ community. But again, it's for anybody. It's everybody feels weird and awkward in their lives, and yeah, it was just a way of Ava, is our sort of our avatar of positivity and sunshine, to tell people it's okay, just be who you are, and embrace the beauty of that. Um, so I agree.
So for season 3, at the end of season 2, we see Beatrice walking away from the OCS. Where do you see her going? What is she going to do? And how does that evolve that you would like to see over season 3?
Well, God, I I don't like to talk about it because I don't want to, if if a miracle were to happen and we were able to make a season 3, I wouldn't want to tip anything to, or I wouldn't want to say, oh, it's going to go this way or it's going to go that way. Again, it's not up to me. It's up to Simon in the end. I saw her, basically what we would do is we'd sit down in the writer's room and we'd say, okay, so what happens to a woman who has lived her life, first of all, hiding who she was, um, joining the sisterhood possibly for the wrong reasons, out of fear or out of embarrassment or personal shame or whatever. What does she do when she's free and she hasn't known anything else? And she happens to be a tactical badass ninja. Um, there's endless possibilities. I personally, I felt like she goes off and tries to explore a normal life and possibly, you know, get over her broken heart, explore other relationships possibly. Maybe that's blasphemy. But my instinct was that she would stretch towards normality. Whereas maybe a better TV idea is that she goes and becomes, Sister Beatrice PI or something, and starts a private investigators
So that
business.
was actually my follow-up question. For all the fanfic writers, what job do you see Beatrice having?
Uh, Let me just comment on the fanfic writers. So when we write Avatrice, I mean, I told this story before that Netflix was like, we can't have nuns kissing and we're not going to have this love story, and we were like, yeah, we are. And so the scripts we wrote for season 2 just said they're friends, and she looks at her like a friend, and then she gives her a big friendly hug, like that sort of thing. And then Alba and Christina and Sarah Walker were like, oh, so we're not doing the Avatrice relationship. And we're like, no, we are. It's just we can't put it in the script. So just anytime you see she looks at her like a friend, that's what it is. And then they were so, Alba and Christina were just so expressive that it's just this love story throughout. However, we're writing it in a very slow burn way because we didn't want any of you to know if it was going to go that way or not go that way in the end. Was there going to be a kiss? Was there not going to be a kiss? And so everything was just very, um, I came up with the moment where she kisses Beatrice on the cheek in episode 2 of season 2. And Sarah Walker was like, you can't do that. She's like, if she knows that her friend is into her, like that's so irresponsible and whatever. And I was like, no, Ava doesn't really know in the front of her brain. She's just sort of clueless. She just knows she loves this person. This is her good friend and means so much to her. And I was like, this kiss is going to make, the kiss on the cheek is going to make everybody freak out. And it did. And it all worked out. But the point is, your fan fiction is blisteringly sexual, and people's panties are dropping, and there's like everybody's in the bathtub, and I'm like, oh my God, like this. It's so funny because as writers of the show, we had to really walk a fine line and just sort of make sure that it was really this budding boiling romance but buried underneath, and then the fan fiction just went like that. So it can be a little bracing to see those stories.
I'm
And
curious
not
how
that I'm
much.
condemning. I love it, and everybody should indulge their fantasies to their greatest extent. But it's a little shocking sometimes.
I'm curious how much fan fiction you've actually consumed, David. Like, did you
I
just get turned off after one story, or like how
No,
much?
no, 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 no. Look, as a as a writer producer of the show, I don't want to read too much fan fiction because I don't want
Right.
to be influenced too much or but I am on Twitter, and oh my God, the stuff I see, because it just suggests Warrior Nun things to me because I've favorited so many
Right.
Warrior Nun things. So
Mm.
so something like I'll see a clip here and a clip there, and it's like, Ava's like, hey, you want to take a shower? And I'm like, what is happening over here?
Yeah, you
It's
gotta
very
So
mind
funny.
the
those
take
tags.
Right.
Yeah. So the takeaway here, guys, is David reads fanfic. He's seen your fanfic,
Some of it,
but keep
yes.
doing your thing because he loves it.
Totally, totally. I love it. That's how I started writing. I when I was 12, I wrote a mashup of Indiana Jones and Star Wars fanfic, and that yeah, that's how I discovered writing, really.
That's
So
amazing.
when does that movie come out?
Yeah.
It sort of
The
just did.
collaboration.
So when I was 12, I invented the laser whip, and then it just came out in the Acolyte,
Yes.
decades
Sick.
later. So
Ooh,
I was ahead of my time.
Manifesting.
Hmm.
Really cool. I think one of the big things that the fandom has wanted to see is obviously the story continue. But one of the downsides from Netflix owning this property is that they kind of shelve projects, and they never see the light of day again.
Yeah.
In the industry where streaming is prominent, where do you see a lot of these stories going? Is there a possibility for new life with things that have been canceled?
Uh, yes. I mean, look, there's always a possibility. Uh, why is it confirming my language? Can it understand my language? Okay, sorry. Do I think there's a possibility? Well, look, Dean and Ben own the rights to the original book, and so it is possible to make something in a Warrior Nun world. But Netflix owns things we created for the show, which includes Beatrice, and I believe it includes the Halo. I'm not sure about that. You can fact check me.
Right.
And they don't tend, as you say, they don't tend to let projects resurrect um, uh, ever, just because they don't have to. They're a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, and if they don't want other people profiting off of what they helped create, then that's their legal right. So, uh, but it's Hollywood. Anything's possible. I think the massive demand for more um, might sway somebody down the road. But I'm not terribly optimistic just because I know I've been dealing with studio and network executives for half
Right.
my life now, so it's not really a caring, friendly business,
Do you
unfortunately.
think that the atmosphere right now with streaming, that writers and, people that are going into these rooms to create these stories, I mean, Warrior Nun aside, do you think that you guys are going into this project with an idea of like, we might only get one season, we might only get 2 seasons, these things might get canceled before we can finish this story? Is it worth doing a project that might not come to fruition? Is that mindset kind of in a lot of writers' minds right now, where you just kind of
Yeah.
want to create a story that can exist only in a season because you might not get the chance to finish it?
Oh yeah. I mean, that was definitely on our minds in the writers' room the whole time. We were like, I mean, look, that should be in your mind regardless. Even network shows 30 years ago could get canceled at any time, and some of them got
Right.
canceled at weird times. There's actually, if you ever watch Magnum PI, season 7, they were like, oh, we're canceled. So at the end of it, he dies and he gets shot and he walks off into heaven. And then they got a season 8 pickup. And so he had to like come back from heaven and then wake up again. So that's kind of funny. Yeah, we definitely had that in mind. Is it worth it? Well, I think it's worth it. Look at all the love, and we got to create something really,
Absolutely.
really cool. But we were aware that, our necks would be on the block every season. And that's why we did the twist, the big twist. I'm sure you all know what it is, but at the end of season 1, in the hopes that it would just create so much demand that they'd make sure we came back. And then with season 2, we might have made a mistake ending it the way we did, but we wanted a definitive climax to the Avatris relationship, and not climax like the way you guys are thinking. I mean, please, Jesus, so
We were
filthy.
not.
I know. But no, we wanted to bring that to like this amazing point, and then having her go off into the other realm. We wanted that to be another cliffhanger that drove a season 3 pickup, but at the same time, we wanted it to feel like an ending, if it was an ending, even though it's tragic and it's sad and it's beautiful. So yeah, that's something that is always on your mind um, uh, when you're working on any show. Really, it's not just the Netflixes and the streamers. It's always kind of been that way. Now they're even more fickle because they have so much material, and I don't understand it. I don't understand why, if you're going to build a film library, which should be the idea of a Netflix, then you should make sure that your series have beginnings, middles, and ends, like Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad has a
Right.
definitive ending, and when you sit down to watch it, it's like reading a fully realized novel. Half of their shows are like reading a half-written novel. So it doesn't make a lot. It seems a little short-sighted to me, frankly.
Right. A lot of their original content doesn't have a definitive end, and you don't get to go back and enjoy that library because you're missing
Yes.
chapters, you're missing the end of a story.
Yeah, and it's not going anywhere. And at least at the end of season 2, we gave an ending of sorts.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I don't understand why they're not building full libraries of amazing shows that people can just watch again and again and again. They just go, oh, well, this isn't working in the moment, so we'll get rid of it. But it's like, people 20 years from now could pick it up and go, oh my God, did you ever watch this show? So
Yeah,
that's
Right.
what
the
I would do.
graveyard of canceled shows. I've stuck to
Mm.
watching things from the early 2000s now because there are 7, 8, 9 seasons, 20 episodes each, and they have an ending. And I haven't had a Netflix subscription in about a year because I just can't take it anymore. I think a lot of people feel that way, which is not good when you're trying to build a customer base for a business, of course. So
No, agreed.
it's one of those
I
things
agree.
that doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Agreed.
Yeah. I
Do
definitely
you
love the
have
way.
any questions?
Do I
Pam?
have any
I just had
questions?
I just had one more for David. Um,
Okay.
One of the big questions, there's so many, this is just something fun. There's so many Halo powers that you guys came up with. We get to see, like, I mean, you mentioned like with Indiana Jones and Star Wars, you had you had the force whip kind of thing going on, the lightsaber whip. What would be your Halo power, or what was your favorite Halo power throughout the series? Because I know you have a favorite. Everyone's got a favorite.
Oh God, I guess my favorite. I mean, what would mine be? It would probably be the Sister Melanie Ultra Blast because that's super fun. But I think my favorite, uh, when we were doing season 2, we hadn't written it as part of the main bulk of season 2. I just came up with this sequence where we see Mother Superior in the past as the Warrior Nun with Shannon before Shannon gets the Halo, and we wanted to show how badass Superior was as Warrior Nun and how she lost the Halo. So we came up with a scene, and then we were like, okay, we need some powers unique to her, and so we have her walk into the building full of armed men, and she's like, "Gentlemen, you have my sisters. I'm here to retrieve them," or whatever it is that she says. And you're like, "What are
That
you
was a
doing?" It's like,
great impression.
oh yeah, I love Sylvia. I mean, Sylvia is just so amazing, and I was just so enamored of her and her talent. And so and her delivery, "Gentlemen, you have my sisters." And she's so tough. And so we wanted something cool and unique for her. So we came up with the creation of the shield. And
Right.
then I think it might have been Simon who suggested there was a cross, like as
Yeah.
crossbars, laser crossbars in the shield. And so that one I thought was pretty cool because he really wanted it to be, when you can combine powers or armor or weapons with the nun
The
aesthetic,
logo
that's the key. And so like I also came up with the chainmail veil uh
for
in
Beatrice,
in
right?
episode 4 for Beatrice, and I thought that'll be really cool, and they can make toys and stuff. But Netflix doesn't make toys because Netflix
Yeah.
is no fun. Actually, I'm working for Netflix again, so I shouldn't say, but still.
I think having that iconography in there though is really cool and adds that extra element of of fun, and it kind of looks like a crusade shield almost,
Yeah,
and so it kind
totally.
of brings it back to that
And then and
kind of an
then
homage.
I think it was Simon who came up with the moment in that scene in episode 4, season 1, where she like hits the guy's gun in the cross
With the
Yeah,
cross, yeah.
Oak
direction.
Cross, if
And
you
then
notice it.
and then they also came up with after Mother Superior kills all those guys in the religious conclave in season 2, that a bunch of them are laid out in a
In
bloody
the cross.
cross.
Bloody
I
Cross.
just I just love all of that. Oh, and then also I was there at the magical moment where we were shooting just before the kiss at the end of season 2. We were in Adriel's cathedral,
Cathedral.
and Chris Lavasseur, the director of photography, he goes, "Oh my God, Simon, come here," like this. And we all go around the monitor, and it's a close up on Alba, and you could see the white cross reflected in her eyeball. And so Simon was like, "Shoot that immediately," and it was really cool. So
That was a really
it's
magical shot. Yeah.
it was magical, and it just happened. She just like, they were just like resting the camera and kind of framing it up on her face, and Chris was like, "Oh my God, look at this." It's pretty
Dark
cool.
brown eyes for the win.
Yeah, right. Agreed. I agree.
Thank you,
All right,
David. We
Ham, do you
appreciate
have
you
a
answering the
question?
questions.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Um,
Any
do I?
others?
We're just having a great
I'm
time
looking at the
chatting.
chat. Yeah, I'm just looking at the chat to make sure we didn't miss anything real quick.
And
All
we
right,
can,
so I have one follow-up question here, and I have to get a Father Vincent question in because everybody
Of
in the Father
course.
Vincent fan club will kill me if I don't.
Of
So
course.
we heard that in season 1, episode 8, when Vincent and Mary go into the mansion to retrieve the map, that there was an original scene where Vincent was supposed to get into a fight. Is that
Yes.
correct? And why did that change? And how come we were robbed of that?
Um, yeah, well, the whole point of episode 8, as you'll see, is that we're starting to reveal that Vincent used to be an enforcer for the cartels. and is a lot more badass than we expected. And Tristan Aloa, who plays Vincent, is just such an amazing actor. And he can play so kind and so, but he can also play so badass. And yeah, well, yeah, the way I originally wrote the scene was the guy getting robbed, like pulls a gun at the last minute and it tries to defend himself, and Vincent dismantles him like brutally, just breaks his wrist and like does all these things to him that I thought were really cool, and the group ultimately thought it was too far. So I don't know. Talk to the other writers. I got voted down on that. I wanted Vincent to shock people at the end of that scene, and but he's sufficiently badass. I think we did get the point across, and maybe I had gone a little too far in the resultant violence.
I feel like Mary would have picked up a little bit more on that vibe of, I don't know what's going on with this dude.
Well, that was kind of the point, is that once Vincent goes off, once his life or Mary's life is threatened, he really goes off to the point that Shotgun Mary's like, damn, like that's too far. Like, I believe the point of the scene was she had to pull him off the guy. And that's sort of cool when you Shotgun Mary,
Right.
it's shocking. Yeah, so I thought it was cool, but that's kind of the fun of the writer's room. If I was writing it by myself, that scene would have stayed in, but I wrote it with other people, and you get other ideas, and you get people going, maybe that's a little far. And that's the point of working with the group. You go, okay, fair enough. And, you go with what you get. And I think we definitely got the point across about Vincent ultimately, but I'm sorry you didn't get to see that scene. It was pretty terrifying and awesome.
Maybe in the future.
Definitely.
Fingers crossed.
Maybe in the future. Let's hope.
Hey, now that you're working
Faith
for
is our
Netflix
business.
again, David. Exactly. Now that you're working for Netflix again, David, are you going to be keeping bloopers on a private server so you can share them with fans?
I have never worked on anything where I didn't keep bloopers. I mean, that wasn't my responsibility on Warrior Nun,
Right.
unfortunately, but I always have a blooper reel saved because hilarious things happen on every production. So I will do my best to retain those things on a secret server.
Yes.
Okay, so
We
actually,
appreciate the behind the scenes content.
I have another
Yes.
follow-up question. Season 1, episode 10, monologue at the end for Vincent.
Mhm.
One, who came up with that awesome monologue? And two, was the idea to switch to Spanish a technical one? Did it just add more gravitas to the show? Why did that develop from English with like the rest of the show?
I don't remember who wrote the monologue. Who's credited on as a writer on that show, on that episode? Is that Simon?
Des?
Let me. I mean, I may be the Warrior Nun detective, but I can't pull that out of my hat that quick. Hold on.
Simon typically writes the pilot and the last episode, so it might have been him. And as far as the Spanish goes, um, uh, you know, Tristan speaks excellent English, but he's more comfortable in Spanish. And Adriel speaks every language, so I think that it was just a way to make it even easier for Tristan to bring depth and complexity to it, and also a way to say that once Adriel is out, that you can use whatever language you like. I would imagine was the thinking behind it.
You said which episode, Phan?
Season 1, episode 10.
And last
Season
one.
1, episode 10 is Simon Barry. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would imagine that's a Simon Barry monologue.
Sweet. Okay,
But you
everybody
guys,
have last questions for this because we
really
got to start
quick to
the
follow
show.
up, Phan. really quick to follow up on that. You, David, at for the episode, for episode 10, you guys did not come up with Tristan being the villain for Vincent being the villain until like episode 7, right? You guys were kind of back and forth between Father Vincent and Doretti. Is that correct?
No, it was just Duretti. Uh, and we had written, almost the entire season when we suddenly said, oh my God, wouldn't it be amazing if at the end, we're like, who did this? Who's behind this? And Vincent steps up and says to Adriel, like kneels to him and says, it was all for you. And it was me. And and we didn't, and then we talked about, well, we'll have to go back and layer that in. And then we were like, no,
You don't
like,
have to.
we're not going to change it, because if we didn't know it was coming, then the audience will never know it's coming. And so
Right.
we didn't change it at all. We just left Vincent as the good guy until that moment. We made sure that he was, that it would make sense, looking back, that he could have been behind it all. But the idea was so shocking because we wrote Vincent with so much love and care, and we just loved him to death. And we were like, we have to get a guy that the audience will just, love and want to be
Right.
on his side. And so no, that was like a shocking idea that came out of nowhere, and we all were like, oh yeah. I mean, that's the coolest thing, when you write a twist that shocks you and you never saw coming, that a good portion of the audience will be in the same boat.
And I
Not
think it's
always
great
supposed to be
because
Duretti, because
Tristan is that.
Duretti's so obviously the bad guy, he's so
Yeah.
obviously,
Right.
and then he's not, he's just an arrogant
Power
striver
player.
within the Catholic Church. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, "What? I didn't kill anybody." And
Yeah.
Joaquin de Alameda is such an amazing actor as well, that you're like, oh, you hate him and then you love him, and it was just such a great transition. I'm sorry, Ham, I cut you off.
Oh no, I was saying like I feel like a lot of TV today is kind of predictable. Like you can usually tell who's going to be the traitor or who's going to end up being the
Right.
bad guy, but this one floored me. Like
Good,
I
good.
had no idea, and I think that's pretty special in this age.
I'm so
Um,
glad.
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I've talked to anyone in the fandom who was like, "Oh yeah, I saw that coming a mile away." Like I expected Vincent to be the one
You
behind it.
you can just guess random people and you might hit on Vincent, but
Yeah, no,
it's very difficult to see coming.
it was really awesome.
Cool. I'm so
Definitely.
glad. I'm
Okay,
Yeah,
so
and
I
glad.
Tristan
am
plays it
going
with
to
such
be.
innocence too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does. All right, so I'm gonna be the idiot here because there is someone in the chat who was saying that they had worked with Tristan, but again, I apologize. I am not familiar with the name. So, Des, can you take a look, please?
Or I remember doing my scene
Oh,
with
Jose?
as Vincent in
Is it
Spanish. Jose Melinas.
Yeah.
Jose Melinas? So Jose Melinas. Hello, hola, Jose. ¿Cómo estás? Um, I so Jose, I had known through Twitter, because he was a fan of this video game series Metal Gear that I've done for many years, um and so, but he lived in Spain, and he's an actor, and so when we went to Spain, um he asked if he could audition, and so I asked Simon. I was like, can we bring in this guy? And he came in and he was really good, and so we cast him as the bartender. There were like two bookend scenes of Vincent getting drunk in the bar, one before he gets accosted by Lilith and one before he changes his mind about Adriel. And there were these beautiful scenes, and Jose played them so beautifully, and he sort of represented, the common man watching this transformation of this broken priest. It was all reflected through Jose's eyes, and they were great scenes, but they were philosophical scenes. drive the story, and so ultimately they got cut, which was a shame because Jose was so good in it. So yes, he's commenting he's got his audition and all that stuff. So yeah, so I was really bummed that Jose's scenes didn't come out because they were really good between the two of them. But that's showbiz, unfortunately.
Well, Jose, now that you mentioned in the chat that you have those things, if you have anything that you'd like to share with the fandom, post it on Twitter. We would love to share it with everybody, and obviously behind the scenes of that experience with you. And that's so cool, David, for you to offer an opportunity like that to kind of have those cross of projects and things. That's amazing.
Well, typically if somebody reaches out to me and says, look, I really want to be a part of this or whatever, and if I have any ability to do it, I always admire that that initiative and the guts to step up and say, hey, I'd like to be seen for this. So so I try to do it where I can. It's rare, but it was a nice thing. I'm just so bummed his scenes got cut because he's a lovely man, excellent actor.
And that would have been a really cool kind of tie between that first bar scene where we have that big monologue in season 1. So that would have been an interesting contrast of those two very different, before we find out that he's, the betrayer, the Judas, and then that post of finding himself again. That would have been really cool.
Yeah, and then and the final scene was everything. The world is starting to go wrong, and the world is starting to realize that Adriel is bad news, and there's just fear. Vincent senses fear in the bar. Everybody's looking at him afraid, and he's like, is this really what I wanted? And
Right.
it was Jose's bartender character who got to articulate, like, what exactly is going on? And that's where Vincent starts to change and go, I think I've gone down the wrong road.
Yeah. And he can't blame it on a wraith.
No, can't blame it on a wraith. What's his name made his own decisions. But that's the thing. Him and what's his name? Cardinal, the evil cardinal from season
William.
2. Cardinal William. Their point is, look, we dedicate our whole lives to, a magical supreme being, and here he is. So, like, why wouldn't we go all in? And it's just illustrates the danger of hardcore fanaticism,
Well, thank you to Jose for putting the snippets into the chat for a link to Twitter. The
Yeah,
fandom,
if his audition is on there, you can see the scenes.
we would love to see.
Cool.
We would love to support you if you're going to be in anything in the future. Yeah.
Absolutely.